Hello, hey, and welcome to my tent, a place to hear life experiences, different opinions, a range of journeys, and a viewpoint different than our own. A place to challenge our own thoughts, a space to learn a little bit, and I promise some fun along the way. I believe we're better when we let a range of people into our tents, so welcome to mine. Hello, everyone. Happy Friday. Welcome back to another episode of the Welcome to My Tent podcast. We're here with a solo episode today, talking all about change. I think this is a good season to be talking about this as we just entered fall, although if you live in Phoenix, it is still over 100 degrees. So weather-wise, we're not quite there yet, but every season that comes in these changes, in these waves, makes me reflect on change in general. And with these seasons typically come changes of pace, changes of routine. I know in particular the summer to fall change for many of us comes with a ton of different things, like our kids maybe going back to school, coming off of a summer break. I am friends with many teachers who are also going back into their positions in education, and it tends to throw a lot of people off every time that we have changes in seasons, in particular, the one that we're in right now. It just seems to be one of the bigger shifts I see with my clients and the people that I am working with, as well as myself. So let's talk about change a little bit. If you know me, you know I love to talk about this stuff because at my core, it is what I do every single day with my clients, my groups, people that I interact with, and with myself, is managing this process of behavior change and personal development and implementing our goals and things that we want to do to show up as the best versions of ourselves. And in looking at it, that seems great, right? It's like, ooh, yes, I want to feel better. I want to show up as someone that I am proud of, and I want to feel like I am thriving. That sounds great. But then a lot of times we get into the process of changing some of our patterns and behaviors, and we realize, damn it, this is hard. This is a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. Then layer in things like seasons changing or other things that happen in our lives that throw some chaos into the mix. And all of a sudden, it is not uncommon for me to have clients in front of me that feel very lost. They feel like they're at a roadblock. They feel a lot of resistance. And this is where things get sticky. But I'm also here to tell you that is where the magic often happens. And what we do with that resistance and that kind of icky feeling that comes up sometimes when we're in this process of change is what really makes a difference in those that find success and those that don't. So let's walk through some of the top 3 things I feel like come up when we're discussing change. And the first is that when something happens and there's a resistance or there's some stickiness that comes into someone's journey, the first thing that we want to do is say that we failed. The big F word. That's what I call it, right? Don't get me wrong. I drop the F-bomb plenty in the real F-bomb, but this is the second one that comes up in my world time after time. People coming to me, and I've been there myself where I've wanted to say, oof, I failed. I failed at what I set out to do. And this can happen at any point, but oftentimes it's very jarring the first time where you're rocking and rolling, you're feeling pretty good, things are going well, and then bam, something happens. And sometimes it is stuff that is completely out of our control. Sometimes it's stuff that maybe is in our control, but we get to this fork in the road and we have these 2 paths in front of us. One is to figure it out. And that's where I guide people. One is to say, let's make informed, empowered decisions. Let's look at what is happening here. Let's take this as feedback, not failure. Let's look at the information that we have at hand to figure out a way forward. The second path in the road is to stop completely. And this is where I am saying Where the resistance and the struggle comes into play is where success or not finding success happens, because you do have the option to take those two paths. And oftentimes this is where people want to give up and they want to say, okay, I failed. It's not worth it. Here's the fork in the road. We're just going to let this go by the wayside. And then they never, ever pick that goal or that endeavor back up again. And so the mindset around this is starting to look at this as that feedback point. So we change the F word that we're using, right? So we're not saying we failed. We're saying, here is a moment that I can gather some information. I'm a data girly. I love my data, and it's no different here. We take a look at what was going on in that surrounding time frame. We look at other things that went into your life or your day or your week that was maybe causing some of this to build up. We have so much information that we can extract if we just take a moment to pause and sit back and ask ourselves these questions to figure out, how can I leverage this information to create something that's going to work for me moving forward? Let's take a high level example, right? So say a client of mine or myself, right? I do this process on myself day in and day out. You are working a job where you are in a routine. You have your working hours and you have your routine of the other things that you're doing around those hours and your other life obligations. And then bam, you get a new job. This is also where it can get confusing, because these resistance points don't always have to be a bad thing. It can be something like a new job that you're very excited about, but you are now in different working hours, in a different working environment. You're working with different people. Maybe you are in a different position where you're now working on the weekends. Whatever the case may be, all of a sudden, the routine that was once working for you is no longer. And a lot of times what I find is people still try to live the life in the, sphere and circle they were in prior, expecting the same results. There's no adjustments. There's no introspection on, okay, maybe I need to take a look at a few things here to figure out how I can accommodate this best and how to make this work. And so people want to go full steam ahead while they have had something in their lives that's caused a change, doing the exact same thing that they were doing prior, expecting success, and then getting very stressed out when they're not feeling that. So maybe they had more time in the mornings previously, and they were doing all of these things that made them feel great and feel good. They started a new job, which starts earlier, and now they're really struggling to find time because their schedule has shifted. And so then they come to me and they say, okay, well, I failed. I feel like for the past 2 weeks, I have done nothing that I wanted to do in the mornings. But when we sit down and ask ourselves, okay, why? We're looking at these other factors that went into it. There's your feedback. There are your data points. We can say, let's figure out a plan moving forward. And so that's a big topic and a big theme of this episode today. And what I see is that instinct, and like all of us, I think, do it. I am guilty of it as well, to say, I failed, I'm stopping. So that's my urge to you, is when you get to these forks in the road or you get to these resistance points, how can you leverage that as feedback instead? I also want to talk about the long-term versus short-term mindset, because this actually also plays into some of the resistance that I see and people feel when they're going through a personal development journey. It's often hard for us as humans, which I understand. The world that we live in today is extremely quickly turnkey. Things are very immediate. Amazon delivers in 2 hours, and we are very used to instant gratification. Not to mention diet culture and society and media has ingrained in us that there can be a quick fix solution to everything. I don't believe in that. I don't believe in that mentality, because I really don't see a world where you can do something for 2 weeks and have that make an impact for the rest of your life. Think about how long our lives are. I am hopeful that I will be strong and healthy until I'm 100, right? So thinking about the fact that me at 35 can do something for 2 weeks that will have an impact on me when I am 100 or 90 is crazy. But we're sold this via marketing and messaging that it's the cure-all. It's the thing that you can do if you just pay us this amount of money, and in 2 weeks, all of your problems will be fixed. And it drives home that short-term mentality that it's very hard for a lot of people to get out of. So I completely understand where this comes from, and I'm very empathetic towards it. I wish that was a reality where I could tell someone to do something for 2 weeks and it would be a permanent solution. But growing takes work, and growing takes continuing to do this. We just talked about this, the forks in the road. It takes that perseverance for when things get difficult to continue taking the path of looking at our feedback and understanding how we can make those changes. And what I really like to emphasize when I am working with the client is sometimes that sucks. It does. It sucks to say, I feel like I just keep doing these things and doing these things, but I'm not feeling an immediate impact. Sometimes we have things that we do feel immediate impacts on. Another high level example is if someone is really wanting to get some more self-care in and you take a nice long hot bath. We typically can have pretty immediate effects from that. Relaxation, maybe our muscles feel better, maybe we've put in some lavender or something and we have a little bit more sense of calm. That's an immediate impact. What it's much harder for people to see is how doing something every day to every week to every month allows you to continue doing that in 10 years, in 5 years, in 1 year. So when we get where all of these tie in together, right? When we get to those junctions in the road, so say someone's been down a personal development journey for about 6 months and they get to that resistance point and they decide to stop. They have done the work for 6 months. What happens when you choose another path and you're maybe in that reevaluation point and you're doing things that maybe don't immediately have this sense of impact, or you're not feeling an immediate sense of relief, when you have taken that path, you have a better chance of in 10 years still doing those things that make you feel like a better person, a stronger person, a more empowered person. So every time I will take someone not having an immediate impact and working and helping them work through that so they can still be doing that in 5 years and in 10 years. If you stop at 6 months, you stop at 6 months. And that's where I'm saying there's the proof of there's really no quick fix cure all for people wanting to continue to learn and develop and grow. And it's what we do with those points and the mindset that goes in behind it of this isn't going to happen overnight, and that's okay. This is going to be a work in progress. We're going to continue to be a work in progress, as we should. I also always tell people, if you haven't changed at all in the past year, you're doing it wrong. We owe it to ourselves to change. We owe it to ourselves to look at what's working and what's not working and make those changes. And some of it, sure, will feel good more immediately. And some of it we have to keep in mind. We're doing this to be able to still do it for years to come. I think a lot about this in terms of exercise. I don't immediately see my muscles grow overnight. I don't immediately see changes to my body. I'm going through a whole physical journey right now with getting my shoulder to be a little bit more mobilized and stretching out through my chest. And I have to remind myself, I'm not probably going to see muscle gains from my PT. What I am going to see is hopefully one day when I am a grandmother, I can pick my grandkids up. I can go on a bike ride with them. I can be active and present. And I'm thinking, way out in the future here. So the short-term, long-term mindset is something I frequently also see people struggle with. I think it's a good point to noodle on, to think about. And the last thing that is a big topic is getting more comfortable with being uncomfortable and mitigating barriers to change. I completely understand. It doesn't feel good to feel uncomfortable or awkward or off. It doesn't. And we've all been there. And it's why a lot of us avoid it like the plague. We want to do anything and everything that we can to not feel a sense of discomfort. And again, all of these are tying together. We feel that sense of discomfort often when something goes awry in our journey and we do make that decision to stop. We say, okay, it's been 6 months. It's been a good ride. This is too hard. We got to go. We feel a more immediate sense of results. So we say like, okay, I've let myself off the hook. I feel less pressure. I don't have to address this uncomfortable feeling, a short-term impact. Long-term, that's not going to be great for us. So we need to get more comfortable with feeling uncomfortable. I will never forget this moment in my life. I am a big fan of therapy. Everyone probably knows that. I have been in therapy for a very long time. Sidebar, I feel like everyone should have a therapist. And often the sessions that I go in thinking, I don't really have anything to talk about today, end up being hefty. But I'll never forget this moment where I was working through some really deep shit, really dark, deep, hard, earth-shattering stuff. I was trying to figure out my identity at my core, trying to figure out boundaries and barriers and letting go of things that I was holding on to. And I told my therapist, I said, this sucks. I thought therapy was supposed to be helpful. I thought you're supposed to, we see these images in movies and in media, people are laying on the couch and having their therapy. And I, in that moment, was so frustrated. And I said, this sucks. Why I feel like shit. And my therapist said, you're doing it right. And I know that's not great to hear, but you're doing it right. And it was such an impactful moment for me because we talked about this, and this is just solidifying how I feel about how I coach and practice is like, okay, and then I got to buckle up and get comfortable with this uncomfortable feeling. Because if we hold it in us, if we hold that in, it's getting masked, but it's not going anywhere. And so it's something that I apply to my practice is it's okay to be uncomfortable. We got to be more comfortable with being uncomfortable. Another therapist once told me, yes, I've had numerous, which I love this analogy. And so I want to share it on here. And it's in relation to this uncomfiness that we avoid. And this was actually my fertility therapy. When I was going through IVF, I got to see through my clinic, which was incredible, a infertility specialist, therapist specialist, which was incredible. And we were in a discussion where I was telling her I was having a really hard time with that not being the only thing that I thought about all day, every day, and having that just cast over everything. And what she said to me was another, oh my gosh, moment where she told me to address my uncomfortable feelings like a person at a party you don't want to see. You show up at a party and someone is there, the someone being your emotions, your feelings, your uncomfortableness. If you spend the entire party trying to avoid them, looking over your shoulder, skirting around, seeing if they're going to the drinks so you don't go to the drinks, and creeping around trying to avoid this person for the entire party, you miss the party. You're not really present in conversations. You're not really focused on anything other than trying to avoid what you're trying to avoid. If you address your feelings head on, if you go into that party and you go over to that uncomfortable feeling or that person and you just say like, hey, nice to see you. I'm addressing that you're here. It gives you permission to then be at the party, be at the rest of the party. That feeling will still be there. It's something that you're going to have to, address and live with and be with, but you've gotten more comfortable with being around the uncomfortable. And it's the same thing here. It's this moment where we can say, oof, this journey is really freaking hard. I can either ignore it and stop and just pretend like nothing's ever happening and let that fester and have that cloud so many other things that I'm doing, or I can address this, acknowledge it, still know it's okay to feel uncomfy, but at least we've said, let's figure out how to make this work and move forward from there. So that was just like two therapist moments in my life I will never forget. And for some reason, those really landed with me. So I wanted to share them here as well, because changing is not easy. Humans, quite literally, like in evolution, are like conditioned to not want to, especially if we're in patterns that are working, but maybe not ideal, but it's the devil that you know. And that's something I see day over day is, well, I know it, I know what this brings and I know what happens when I function this way. And I've figured out ways to make it work, but I still don't feel great. But that's the easier option. Like deciding to change is no small feat. And even getting to the point of saying, I am ready to take action and accountability over my life is a huge step. And if you're not there yet, it's okay. I do think there is a time and a place for people to endeavor down this path. There have been periods of my life where I was in straight survival mode and I just needed to survive, while getting myself to a place I could eventually do that. But if you are ready and you are ready to say yes to taking ownership and action, to feeling like your best self and operating most optimally, I'm so proud of you, because that's not an easy step to take, because per this whole conversation, it's most likely going to have challenges and you're going to find times that are uncomfortable and there's going to be paths in the road that may feel confusing to choose from. So if you're down this path, I am eternally proud, always happy to chat about questions you may have, or if you need someone to help you through this journey, I am obviously here. But that was pretty much all I wanted to talk about today. A, quick, shorter and sweeter episode. I've just been thinking about this a ton recently as seasons change and people change, and my life definitely has changed. Thank you for tuning in to the Welcome to My Tent podcast. We are coming back next week with some more guest episodes and a couple other guests in the works to be recording. But I'm happy you're here. I appreciate you and have a great rest of your day. Bye. Thank you for tuning in to the Welcome to My Tent podcast. I hope you had as much fun listening as I do recording. I am so happy to have you here, and see you next episode.